The rain had a rhythm, a constant drizzle that drummed on the rooftops, slid down the bus windows, and filled the cracks of the forgotten streets. Beneath the Tower Bridge, in a shadowed corner, where footsteps rarely paused, lived a man named Thomas Gray. He was once a piano tuner, once a father, once somebody. Now he was just a man under the bridge, wrapped in an old army coat, a beanie pulled low, and a duffel bag filled with memories he refused to part with. Every morning he would sit on a folding chair outside his cardboard shelter and watch the river flow and the world walk past. But he wasn't begging. He was writing. On scraps of paper, on napkins, on the backs of takeaway menus, letters, poems, thoughts, to no one in particular. One day, though, someone read one. The girl with the camera. Her name was Emily Clark, a 22-year-old photography student from Manchester who was temporarily living in London for her final university project. Her assignment was to capture the unseen stories of the city. She had walked across Tower Bridge countless times over the past week, trying to find that moment. Her professor always talked about the raw, unscripted emotion that made a photo unforgettable. That morning, the sky was bruised with clouds, and the chill of early autumn clung to her scarf as she walked along the Thames. Her camera hung around her neck, mostly untouched. Then, something unfamiliar caught her eye. Just under the bridge, a man with silver in his beard and a pen in his hand was scribbling something onto a flattened cereal box. He wasn't looking up. He wasn't asking for anything. He was simply writing. Emily hesitated. Something about him, the solitude, the quiet purpose, pulled at her curiosity. She took a photo, then another, but she couldn't just walk away. Not today. She stepped closer, slowly, gently. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you writing letters?" Part 3. A voice in the silence. Emily returned the next morning. This time she brought two things with her, a thermos of hot tea and a notebook. Thomas was there, as if he hadn't moved from the spot all night. Though he had. He always did. He didn't sleep in the same place twice. It wasn't safe. But when he saw her approach again, something in his shoulders relaxed. Not trust exactly, but recognition. "You again," he said with a half smile. "Thought maybe you were just being polite yesterday." "I was," Emily replied, "but also curious." She handed him the tea. He accepted it silently. Then she offered the notebook. "It's empty, but it's yours. If you want to keep writing," he said, flipping through the pages, blank as fresh snow. "Too many pages," he muttered. "I won't fill it." "You don't have to," Emily said, "but I think your words should go somewhere better than the back of cereal boxes." That moment, quiet, strange, almost silly, was the beginning of something neither of them could have expected. The Letter Reader, Part 4. The man behind the words. The next day, Emily returned to the bridge with a nervous smile and a deeper urgency in her step. Thomas was already there, sitting in his usual spot, his back to the railing, notebook in lap, pen in hand. He looked up as she approached, reading the shift in her eyes before she even spoke. "You told someone," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Emily froze. I posted one of your letters. I didn't say your name. I didn't even take a photo of your face. Just your hands. Just your words." Thomas didn't respond immediately. He tapped his pen on the cover of the notebook, slow and rhythmic. A long silence passed. Then, with surprising calm, he said, "Did anyone care?" Emily opened her phone and showed him 40,000 shares, hundreds of thousands of likes, thousands of comments. People asking for more. People crying over his words. People from America, from India, from Turkey, from home. Thomas blinked. Lips parted. He stared at the screen as if it was something sacred. Then his voice cracked. "I wrote that on the back of a discarded receipt, using a pen I found in a bin behind a cafe. And now it's been 2 more places than I have." Emily sat beside him. "It's you they saw, not just the words." Thomas exhaled. "No," he said. "They didn't see me. That's the only reason it worked, because I'm no one to them. Just a ghost with a pen." She wanted to argue, to insist he was someone, but she held her tongue. Sometimes truth needed time to land. Instead, she said softly, "They want more." Thomas looked away. "What if I don't have more?" "You do," Emily said. "You've lived it." The Letter Reader, Part 5. It was a windy Thursday when the man in the navy trenchcoat appeared under the bridge. He walked slowly, eyes scanning the graffiti-stained wall, the rusting rail, and finally landed on Thomas. Seated with his pen poised, mid-thought, Emily had just arrived with coffee when she noticed him. Clean-shaven, expensive shoes, a leather messenger bag. He didn't belong here, which made him all the more intriguing. He approached Thomas. He said softly, as though confirming a rumor. Thomas looked up, startled. "No photos," he muttered instinctively. The man held up both hands. "Not here for that. I'm Richard Crane, senior editor at Graythorn Press." Emily blinked. That was the Graythorn, the one behind half the best-selling poetry and memoirs of the last decade. Richard continued, calm but focused. "Your letters have been circulating. I've read every single one. Twice." Thomas went silent. Richard sat on the edge of the nearby bench, unzipping his bag. Inside was a mock-up, a black and white paperback cover with the title, "Letters from the Bridge," the words of a man who thought he was invisible. Thomas's hands trembled as he reached out to take it. That night, Thomas didn't sleep under the bridge. He sat on the bench, hands trembling, reading and rereading the contract Richard had left with him. Emily watched him from across the road. Her eyes welled up. This wasn't just success. This was recognition. A man once forgotten, now found. One letter at a time. The Letter Reader, Part 6. Thomas's hands trembled as he read the letter. The past never forgets. The contract lay in Thomas's lap, like a heavy relic of a world he'd once left behind. He hadn't held a pen for anything official in over a decade. Not since the last signature that had ruined everything. The mortgage, the lawsuit, the final hospital bill with his name spelled wrong, but pain spelled wrong, but pain spelled right. Emily sat beside him, silent, offering space but not distance. "You think they'll make me look like a hero?" he asked suddenly, voice low. Emily shook her head. "No, they'll see you for what you are." "What's that?" "Someone who kept going." Thomas looked down again. A week later, the publisher sent a team. Not the flashy kind, just to editors and a voice recorder. They set up at the cafe across from the bridge. Thomas refused a hotel room. "I don't want to be comfortable," he said. "That's not where these words come from." Each day, they recorded dozens of letters. Some written years ago on napkins, some pulled from soaked notebooks Emily had saved. A few were so raw that even the editors had to pause, hiding behind blinking cursors and misted glasses. But there was one story Thomas hadn't told yet, not even to Emily. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a worn envelope. "This," he said slowly, "was the first letter I ever wrote on this bench." Emily leaned closer. He opened the envelope. Inside wasn't a letter, but a photograph. A boy, age 9, dressed in a suit too big for him, eyes bright, arms raised. "My son," Thomas whispered. Emily froze. He had never mentioned a son. "I was late picking him up. Just once. It was raining. The accident wasn't supposed to happen. But I wasn't there." His voice cracked like old pavement. "That letter, I wrote it to him. Apologizing. Every day since, I've written more. Not because I think he can read them, but because I need him to know I still remember." The Letter Reader. Part 7. Echoes in Ink. The morning after Thomas shared the photo of his son, the air felt heavier. Not with grief, but with truth. Emily brought 2 coffees and sat next to him like always. But today, Thomas didn't reach for his pen. "You ever wonder," he said slowly, "if some letters are meant to stay unsent?" Emily took a sip. "Maybe. But they still deserve to be written." Thomas nodded, eyes distant. That afternoon, a small crowd gathered at the bench. Word had spread. Not just about the book, but about him. The man who wrote letters to the unseen, to the unheard, to the forgotten, and the gone. A woman approached, mid-50s, wearing a red scarf and carrying a folded piece of paper. "I read what you wrote about your son," she said softly. "I lost mine, too. I never wrote him anything. I didn't know I could." Thomas gently took her letter. "You just did." he replied. The days passed, and the bench changed, not physically, but spiritually. People began leaving letters beneath it, notes, stories, even apologies wrapped in ribbon. The city started calling it the Bench of Words. Local news came, then national. A movement began. #letters that heal. But amid all the momentum, Thomas felt something else rising inside him. Fear. Not of attention, but of finishing. He had built a life in pieces, letters, regrets, slow healing. If the book ended, would the healing stop too? That night, he sat alone at the bench. The city lights flickered in the puddles beneath his feet. He wrote a new letter. Dear Future. The Letter Reader, Part 8. It was a rainy Wednesday when Emily found the envelope. No stamp, no name, no address. Just one word, scribbled on the front, almost trembling in its ink. You. She hesitated before handing it to Thomas. When he opened it, the paper inside smelled faintly of lavender and sorrow. I don't know who you are, it began. I only know that your words reached me on a night I didn't want to see morning. Your letter to the woman who lost her son. It wasn't just hers, it was mine, too. I've carried so many letters in my chest, letters I never dared write, but after reading yours, I did. I'm still here because someone like you exists. Thank you. No name, no return, just healing handed quietly to the man who needed it just as much. Thomas sat quietly after reading. Emily didn't speak. She knew better than to fill the silence that morning. Later, Thomas pulled out his own letter and added a line to the last one he had written. And sometimes, when we send light out into the world, it finds its way back to us. The Letter Reader, Part 9. The day the bench cried. The first time Thomas didn't come to the bench, it rained. Not hard, not wild, just a quiet, steady drizzle, like the sky itself was crying. Emily noticed, the barista from the nearby cafe, who always gave him tea. Noticed, the woman who came every Friday to read letters out loud. She noticed too. He was always there. But not today. She called his phone. No answer. She walked a block to his apartment, a place she'd never been. Despite all the words they'd shared, a neighbor opened the door. He's in the hospital, she said softly. Collapsed last night. Emily's heart sank. Thomas had pneumonia. His lungs were tired. His body, older than the years it had seen. When Emily stepped into his hospital room, she saw something she never expected. Fear. Not of death, but of disappearing. She sat by his side and said nothing for a long while. Then she pulled out her phone. You told everyone else's story, she whispered. Now we tell yours. That night, she posted an update on the bench's page. The letter reader is resting now. But he needs us, the ones he helped heal, the ones who found pieces of themselves in his letters. If he ever touched your life, tell him. Let him know he was seen. By morning, Thomas's hospital room was filled with flowers, printed letters, cards, drawings. Nurses took turns reading them aloud. One by one, from Kansas, from Brighton, from Cape Town, from a 14-year-old girl who wrote, Your words saved my mom when nothing else could. Thank you for giving me back my mother. Thomas smiled through tears. I didn't save anyone, he whispered. I just wrote what I wish someone had written to me. Emily held his hand, and in doing that, you wrote what everyone needed. Outside, the rain stopped, and somewhere in the world, another letter was being written, because of a man who sat on a bench and listened. The Letter Reader, Part 10. The Letters That Never Came. Thomas was getting better. His lungs still wheezed when he laughed, but he did laugh, especially when the nurses read the funnier letters aloud. But something in him had shifted. He no longer feared death. What he feared now was unfinished stories. One evening, as Emily helped sort through the hundreds of new letters delivered to the hospital, Thomas asked, Have you ever wondered how many letters don't get written? Emily looked up. What do you mean? I mean the apologies people never send. The love they never confess. The gratitude they carry but never deliver. That night, Thomas began a new kind of letter. He called them letters that never came. He wrote to the son who waited for his father to say, I'm proud of you. To the girl who still checks her phone for a message that never arrived. To the wife who died thinking she was unloved. Weeks later, Emily read one aloud on the bench. She was alone, but she recorded it and posted it online. Dear you, this is the letter that should have come on the day you cried alone. It should have said, I see you. I'm sorry. I wish I'd done better. It should have held your hand. So here it is. Late, but honest. TLR. Within hours, the post went viral. People from around the world started writing their own versions. Hashtag #LetterStatenoversan began trending in over 20 countries. Some mailed their letters to the bench. Some left them folded between the flowers. Some simply whispered them to the wind. Thomas smiled as Emily showed him the messages. They were never meant to go unread, he said. We just needed someone to start. But what Thomas didn't know was that his story was about to turn in a way no one expected. A young woman stood at the bench. She took out a letter addressed to Thomas. It was a letter that should have come from her, the one she wrote in the hospital, the one that never made it to him. She opened it. Dear Thomas, it began. This is the last part of a 10-part series. What happens next will surprise you. Stay tuned for more. The year is 2023. You are watching this on a device connected to the World Wide Web. It's time for the final part of our serialized short story, The Letter Reader. It was a rainy Thursday when Emily found it. Tucked beneath a stack of new letters at the hospital was a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just a name written in trembling handwriting. Thomas Lane. Emily paused. She'd never seen a letter addressed to Thomas himself. She carried it to his room, heart beating a little faster. You've got mail, she smiled. Thomas looked surprised. Really, for me? He carefully opened the envelope with fingers still weak from weeks of illness. Inside, a single sheet of yellowed paper. His eyes scanned it once, then again, then welled with tears. Emily grew concerned. Thomas, is everything okay? He handed her the letter. She read, Dear Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm probably long gone. But I never stopped thinking about you. I was a coward, son. I didn't know how to be a father. The day I left, I told myself you'd be better off without me. But the truth is, I needed you more than you ever needed me. I heard about the letters. I heard about you. And I'm proud. So proud. I hope one day you'll forgive me, Dad. Emily didn't know what to say. Thomas wiped his eyes and whispered, I never thought I'd hear from him. Not in this life. He folded the letter carefully, almost reverently, and placed it on his bedside table. I guess some letters do come, even if they're late. But the mystery deepened. Because when Emily checked the security footage later that night, no one had entered the hospital mailroom that day. No one had dropped off that letter. And the handwriting, it matched a letter from 1979 found at the bottom of the pile weeks ago. A letter never mailed. Something, or someone, was delivering closure. And the world was beginning to notice. In London, a young woman searched for answers. In Berlin, a man prepared for war. And in Tokyo, a boy made a life-changing decision. All because of letters. The power of words. Do you believe in fate? Do you believe in second chances? Do you believe stories can change the world? Well, I do. And that's why I'm so glad you're here. Because together, we get to make stories come to life. We get to build worlds. We get to change lives. This has been The Letter Reader. All the letters, all the words, they're just the beginning. Because every story matters. Every voice matters. And together our impact can be truly extraordinary. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And most importantly, thank you for caring. Because when we care, when we connect, that's when the real magic happens. That's why I make these videos. And I hope they've inspired you to make something beautiful in your corner of the world. So go on, make something beautiful, and I'll see you next time. The Letter Reader, Part 11. The name on the envelope. It was a rainy Thursday when Emily found it. Tucked beneath a stack of new letters at the hospital was a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just a name written in trembling handwriting. Thomas Lane. Emily paused. She'd never seen a letter addressed to Thomas himself. She carried it to his room, heart beating a little faster. "You've got mail," she smiled. Thomas looked up. He was reading a book about World War II fighter planes. "Really? For me?" he asked, a bit confused. He carefully opened the envelope, with fingers still weak from weeks of illness. Inside, a single sheet of yellowed paper. His eyes scanned it once, then again, then they welled with tears. Emily grew concerned. "Thomas, is everything okay?" he asked. He handed her the letter. She read, "Dear Tommy, if you're reading this, I'm probably long gone. But I never stopped thinking about you. I was a coward, son. I didn't know how to be a father. The day I left, I told myself you'd be better off without me. But the truth is, I needed you more than you ever needed me. I heard about the letters. I heard about you, and I'm proud. So proud. I hope one day you'll forgive me." "Dad." Emily didn't know what to say. This wasn't the type of letter anyone should get, especially not now. Thomas wiped his eyes and whispered, "I never thought I'd hear from him. Not in this life." He folded the letter carefully, almost reverently, and placed it on his bedside table. "I guess some letters do come, even if they're late." Later that night, after Thomas was asleep, Emily checked the security footage. No one had entered the hospital mailroom that day. No one had dropped off that letter. And the handwriting, it matched a letter from 1979, found at the bottom of the pile, weeks ago. A letter never mailed. What was happening here? Was someone, or something, delivering closure? Meanwhile, across town, at a small cottage with peeling paint and a crooked chimney, an old woman sat down for the night. Her name was Agnes, and for 73 years, she'd waited for this moment. She'd kept the secret of Thomas's parentage hidden for all that time, knowing it would break her sister's heart. Now, watching Thomas on the news, a small smile touched her lips. It was time the world knew the truth. Time. She closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her wrinkled cheek. She was ready to go now. She'd done all she could. The rest was up to fate. The next morning, Thomas was a changed man. He'd read his father's letter twice already, and each time it brought a smile to his face. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain: he wasn't alone. For the first time in his life, he felt a connection to people, to a past he never knew. The rain had stopped, and a shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating Thomas's room. He walked over to the window and raised his hand to touch the glass. As the sun hit his fingertips, it glowed an otherworldly blue. Startled, he pulled back. What was happening to him? Was this the same world he'd lived in for the past 22 years? Outside, a blue jay landed on the window ledge, tilting its head as if beckoning him to look again. Suddenly, Thomas understood. This was just the beginning. Thank you for watching. If you've been blessed by our stories, please share them with others. Your support helps us to keep going. Let's read some scary stories. The Letter Reader, Part 13. Emily stared at the envelope on her desk. No postage, no address, no handwriting, just her name embossed in faded gold. Emily June. It hadn't been there when she left for lunch, and no one remembered seeing anyone come into the mailroom. She picked it up. It was warm, as if it had just been written. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Blank. No message, no signature. Just a faint scent, lavender and smoke. She held it under the light. Nothing. Ran a pencil across the paper, still blank. But when she tilted it toward the window, a shimmer appeared. Letters, faint as mist. She pressed the paper against the window pane, eyes wide. Words revealed themselves like fog lifting from a lake. You are the bridge, Emily. The past chose you. You are not just reading the letters. You are writing the next one. Her breath caught. Then, another shimmer. The writing continued. Soon, someone will arrive. A patient. Room 413. He has forgotten his story. Help him remember. The future depends on it. Emily dropped the paper, heart racing. Room 413. That wing had been closed off for years. The old hospital wing. No one went up there. Not since the fire. Yet the words burned into her mind. Patient. Room 413. She had to tell someone. Maybe it was a prank. But who would have known about the letter? Who would have known about the lavender smoke? She raced up the stairs, two at a time, ignoring the prickle of goosebumps on her arms. The air grew colder as she climbed. Then she turned the corner into the dimly lit hallway. The doors were numbered 401 through 415, each one sealed with a metal placard that read "Patient Room, Do Not Enter." The fire had taken so many lives, but the hospital had rebuilt. New equipment, new technology, new hope. Except this wing. This part remained untouched, abandoned, a place for making memories. She stopped in front of the fourth door from the end, room 413. She hesitated, hand hovering over the knob. What if it was a prank? What if someone was hiding in the room? She took a deep breath. No one. She was the only one who knew about the letter. She turned the knob and pushed the door open. The hinges screamed. The sound echoed in the silent hall. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Light spilled onto the worn carpet. An old-fashioned typewriter sat on a desk beside the bed. A half-full glass of water rested on the nightstand, and by the window sat an old man, thin as a rail. He wore a faded blue shirt and a leather jacket. His hair was white as snow, his eyes a startling shade of violet. He turned his head and smiled. "I've been waiting for you." The floorboards groaned under Emily's weight as she climbed the attic stairs. Dust motes danced in a single shaft of sunlight, piercing the gloom. And then she saw it, a rocking horse frozen mid-gallop, its paint chipped and faded. Memories flooded back. Her brother Thomas, his infectious laughter echoing in her ears. Then the darkness, the suffocating darkness that had stolen him. She shuddered, pulling her cardigan tighter. A floorboard creaked below her. Footsteps. Had she imagined it, the sound? Or was someone really up here with her? Slowly, she turned toward the sound, each step making a tiny drum solo in the vast space. There, in the corner, something moved. A man sat huddled on the floor, his shoulders shaking. As he turned, Emily gasped. His face, pale and drawn, was streaked with tears. "Who are you?" she whispered, stepping closer. The man scrambled back, his eyes wide with terror. "Who am I?" He looked down at his hands, then back at her, his voice cracking. "I'm the one you came to see, aren't I? I'm the one in the photographs." Emily frowned. "What photographs?" The attic door burst open, flooding the room with light and a woman's angry voice. "Thomas, is that you? Why haven't you come out yet?" The woman rushed to the man on the floor, kneeling beside him. "Oh, love, what are you doing here? How did you get in here?" She looked up at Emily, her eyes flashing. "And who are you? Do you know who he is?" Emily shook her head. The woman pulled Thomas closer, shielding him. "He's not ready to see anyone, least of all you. Leave us alone, please." Emily wanted to protest, but the woman cut her off. "You can't help him, so leave. Now, please." Emily backed away, her hand shaking as she reached for the doorknob. Was he really Thomas? Was this woman his sister? What had happened to them both? So many questions, but no answers. Just as she reached the stairs, she heard Thomas's voice, barely a whisper. "Don't go. Please, stay." She froze, torn between her duty and her growing feelings for the mysterious man. What was she supposed to do? Stay and risk losing him forever, or go and let the shadows claim him? The letter reader, part 15. The keys tapped softly, echoing through the quiet room. Each word that flowed through the typewriter sent a chill up Emily's spine. But they weren't her memories. Not truly, yet they felt close. Like a half-remembered dream. July 12, 1954. He was 11. His name was Peter. The name appeared on the page as if summoned from another time. Emily's fingers didn't hesitate. Peter had lived in this building when it had been a boarding house. A quiet boy with wide eyes and a talent for sketching. He used to sit near the attic window for hours, drawing the clouds and people he imagined in the streets below. His parents, she wrote, were distant. A father who was always gone and a mother who drank her memories away. He made up stories to survive, but one day a real story found him. He heard whispers in the walls. Emily typed, her heart pounding. Not scary, just lonely. So Peter followed the voices one night, barefoot and brave, up into the attic. There, hidden behind a loose panel, he found a box filled with hundreds of love letters, apologies, unsent truths. Peter, too young to understand them fully, began to answer them. He made people whole again, in his own way. He believed he was helping. He called at the attic post office, Emily wrote. But then the letters stopped coming. The voices grew quiet. And Peter, he vanished. She pulled her hands from the typewriter. The room was spinning. She backed away from the machine, from the man in the chair, now asleep, or something deeper than sleep. Peter vanished, she whispered. What happened to him? Suddenly, the typewriter dinged. One last sentence appeared on the page, typed by no visible hands. He's still waiting for someone to reply. The air in the attic was thick with dust and anticipation. Emily leaned closer to the old typewriter, its keys frozen in time like the attic's cobwebbed furniture. Each stroke echoed in the silence, each word revealing a story from the past. She reached the end of the first letter, the paper worn and faded. I wonder if anyone will ever find these letters, this hidden room, this forgotten post office. The words hung in the air, unanswered. Emily looked up. Peter, the enigmatic man who had led her here, was fast asleep in a chair, his chest rising and falling with soft snores. A faint smile played on his lips, as if he had shared his secret and found peace. But Emily couldn't shake off the feeling that something was missing, a piece of the puzzle that didn't quite fit. She glanced at the typewriter again. The sheet of paper was still stuck under the roller, the ink still wet, the words shimmering in the dim light. He's still waiting for someone to reply. Was this just a message in a bottle from the past? Or was there someone still here in this attic? Was Peter expecting a response? A shiver ran down Emily's spine. She could feel the presence of unseen eyes upon her, the attic's whispers urging her to continue. With trembling hands, she reached out to touch the cool metal keys. They felt strangely alive under her fingertips, as if waiting for her to play their song. She hesitated. What if this was just a figment of her imagination, a product of the house's whispering walls? But the urge to reply, to close this silent chapter, was too strong to ignore. As if guided by an invisible hand, Emily began to type. The sound of the keys filled the attic, mingling with the wind's mournful song. She poured her heart into the words, hoping to reach whoever was waiting on the other side of the typewriter. Dear Peter, I found your letters. I read your words. I don't know if you're still here or somewhere else, but your stories matter. You matter. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. The attic window rattled as if disturbed by the words spoken into existence. Emily paused, her fingers hovering over the keys. Something was shifting in the room, a change in the air, a rustle in the shadows. Then, as if drawn by an invisible thread, a new envelope slid under the door. It was slightly ajar, revealing a glimpse of the old wooden floorboards. With bated breath, Emily rose from the typewriter and stepped closer. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to open the envelope. Inside was a single letter, its edges slightly singed as if time itself had tried to erase it. You heard me. Thank you, Peter. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Could this be a reply from the past, a connection through time? But there was more. Tapped to the bottom of the page was a sketch. A child's drawing of Emily sitting at the typewriter, her hair flowing, her eyes sparkling with joy. In that moment, the attic's whispers ceased. The room grew quiet. The silence now felt different, lighter. Emily understood. The house had collected voices, memories, souls in limbo, all waiting for someone to listen. And now she had become the new letter reader, bridging the gap between past and present, giving voice to those who had waited too long for someone to hear their stories. It was Emily's turn. Now, after everything Peter had shown her, she wasn't scared of what might be in the study. She was scared of what she might find in herself. But curiosity, that was a powerful force. Emily descended the stairs, the key heavy in her pocket. Sunlight slanted through the grimy window, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the stillness. The air hung heavy with the scent of aged paper and leather. She stepped closer, tracing the embossed designs on the desktop. An intricate scene of swirling vines and clasped hands. Hands that once had reached for this very key. A pang of longing shot through her. Did Peter often come up here? Had he felt the same pull towards his past, towards them? The question echoed in the vast space, unanswered. She inserted the key into the lock. It turned with a click that seemed to reverberate through the house. The door swung open, revealing not a study, but a bedroom. Not a room filled with books and papers, but with clothes and personal items. A half-finished sweater lay on the bed, a paint-splattered smock hanging from the door. A mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting a sliver of sunlight, a dusty ray of hope. The room was empty, yet it felt full. Full of potential, of a life lived and a story waiting to be told. Who had lived here, and what had become of them? Was this Peter's sanctuary, a place where he'd shed the weight of the world, and just been himself? Emily walked to the mirror, its surface clouded with age. She couldn't see her reflection, but she could sense it, watching her from behind the glass, urging her to stay, to delve deeper into the mysteries that swirled around them. This room, this house, this shared past, it was all a puzzle, and she was determined to solve it. With each creaking step, each whispered secret, the pieces were falling into place, revealing a picture both beautiful and haunting. The study might have been locked away, but its echoes still resonated. In the attic, amidst the clutter of Peter's life, Emily found more than just a collection of stories. She found a legacy of love, loss, and the enduring power of connection. Now, standing on the threshold of the unknown, she was ready to turn the page to the next chapter in her own story. Because sometimes the most profound discoveries aren't found, but felt. And the attic knew exactly how to make sure she never forgot it. This house holds so many secrets. Who knows how many stories remain hidden within its walls? There's something about the idea of uncovering these secrets, of giving them a voice, that I find so incredibly intriguing. And in this room, surrounded by all these old books and documents, I feel like I'm stepping into another era. Each object telling me a piece of the puzzle, each one leading me closer to understanding the people who once walked these very floors. And then there's the attic. Just the thought of all those letters up there waiting to be read sends a shiver down my spine. Some of them were meant for my grandparents, filled with hopes and dreams, secrets and desires. And some were meant for the world, stories that deserved to be told, but for some reason never were. Why did Peter keep these letters? Why did he wait to send them? Was he afraid of what the world would think? Afraid of the pain they might cause? Or was he simply waiting for the right person to carry his legacy forward? And then there's this room, the study. What was Peter hiding in here? What kind of story does this room hold? As I stand before the heavy oak door, I can feel the weight of history pressing down on me. This is where Peter spent countless hours, no doubt poring over his research, writing his stories. And now it's my turn to continue his work, to uncover the truth. With each step I take, I feel his presence with me, guiding me, watching me, waiting for me to finish his story. And when I finally open this door and see the old typewriter sitting on the desk, I know that this is where it all comes together. This is where I become the keeper of the stories, the chronicler of this house, the one who carries its memories forward into the world. It's a daunting task, but I'm not afraid. I have Peter's words to inspire me. And who knows, maybe in sharing these stories, we just might find a little bit of magic along the way. Hey, everybody, this is the author. Welcome to part 19 of the miniseries based on the life of Emily's grandmother. The old house breathed with secrets. As midnight approached, Emily stood outside room 3, a narrow wooden door at the far end of the east wing hallway. It was a room she had never opened before. She held the photograph of her grandmother, its edges worn smooth by time. The clock downstairs struck 12. Dong, dong, dong. The final chime echoed like a heartbeat through the walls. Emily turned the knob. The room was dim and cold. There was no furniture, just aged wallpaper, peeling at the edges, and wooden floorboards that creaked with each step. But at the far wall, there was something unusual. A full-length mirror, freestanding, covered in a white cloth. She stepped closer. Her breath caught. A strange energy pulsed in the air, like static on skin. Emily pulled the cloth away. The mirror reflected her. Yes, but the room in the reflection was different. Furnished, warm. A desk. A lit oil lamp. and sitting at the desk, a woman, her grandmother young, alive, writing something with focused intensity. Emily gasped. The woman in the mirror paused. Slowly, she turned, as if sensing her. Their eyes met. Then a whisper, not from the mirror, but behind Emily. She left her truth here, hidden in her final letter. Emily spun around, no one there. When she looked back, the mirror only showed her own reflection again. The vision was gone. Emily dropped to her knees and began tapping the floorboards near the mirror. Something felt off. Tap, tap, clink. A hollow space. She pried it open. Inside, a sealed envelope, weathered but untouched by time. The handwriting on the front. For my granddaughter. When the truth is ready to be heard. Emily's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter and a photograph. Peter and her grandmother, arm in arm, smiling. Dearest Emily, the letter began. You were never told the full truth about our family. And for that, I'm sorry. There are things that were buried to protect you. But now, you're strong enough to know them. Her grandmother had loved Peter more than anyone knew, more than her own husband, more than the village would ever have accepted. And Peter had been disowned because of it. The letters in the attic, the silence, the heartbreak. It was never just history. It was personal, and Emily was now the keeper of it all. This is room 3. Why? Because this is where the story began. Right here in this very room. In part 19, we saw Emily discover an old photograph and a letter hidden in room 3. The letter was from a man named Peter to Emily's grandmother, Lena. And as we read in part 19, the last line of the letter was, "Forever yours, Peter." But who was Peter, and what was his connection to room 3? Well, today we're going to find out. Before we start, I want to give a huge shout out to our supporters. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Now, let's get into it. Emily sat cross-legged on the dusty floor of room 3, clutching the letter and photograph, her heart racing. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. There are things that were buried to protect you, she read on. There are things that were buried to protect you, she read on. Peter and I met before the war in secret corners of the village, behind church halls and gardens. He was different, gentle, thoughtful, not like the men I was told to marry. But the world wasn't ready for us. When I was arranged to marry Thomas, your grandfather, I didn't say no. I didn't have the strength, but I carried Peter's letters with me all my life, every single one. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. The story she thought she knew was unraveling. She had believed her grandmother to be a quiet, obedient woman. But behind that silence was a storm of unspoken love and sacrifice. The photograph, it wasn't just a moment frozen in time. It was a secret held in defiance of everything expected. A sudden wind rattled the windows. Emily turned sharply. The mirror stood still, but her own reflection looked different. Was she imagining it, or did her reflection smile back with a knowing sadness? She tucked the letter into her coat and stood up. Downstairs, she made her way back to the attic, where all the other letters waited. She now understood. This house wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was heavy with love that never had a place to breathe. She spent the next 2 days reading every letter Peter had written. In them, he poured out stories of music, politics, poetry, everything her grandmother had hidden from the world. Their shared dreams, their plans, their heartbreak. But in the final letter, dated August 5th, 1954, Peter wrote, "I will stop writing now, not because I've stopped loving you, but because I love you enough to let you go." Emily pressed her hand to her chest. It felt like her heart was breaking for a love that wasn't even her own. As she closed the final letter, she made a decision. This story wouldn't remain hidden. She would write it. She would tell the world who her grandmother really was, who Peter had been, and why it mattered. The past may have been buried, but Emily was going to dig it up and bring it into the light. This is room 3. Why? Because this is where the story began. Right here in this very room. In part 19, we saw Emily discover an old photograph and a letter hidden in room 3. The letter was from a man named Peter to Emily's grandmother, Lena. And as we read in part 19, the last line of the letter was, "Forever yours, Peter." But who was Peter, and what was his connection to room 3? Well, today we're going to find out. Before we start, I want to give a huge shout out to our supporters. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Now, let's get into it. Emily sat cross-legged on the dusty floor of room 3, clutching the letter and photograph, her heart racing. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. There are things that were buried to protect you, she read on. There are things that were buried to protect you, she read on. Peter and I met before the war in secret corners of the village, behind church halls and gardens. He was different, gentle, thoughtful, not like the men I was told to marry. But the world wasn't ready for us. When I was arranged to marry Thomas, your grandfather, I didn't say no. I didn't have the strength, but I carried Peter's letters with me all my life, every single one. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. The story she thought she knew was unraveling. She had believed her grandmother to be a quiet, obedient woman. But behind that silence was a storm of unspoken love and sacrifice. The photograph, it wasn't just a moment frozen in time. It was a secret held in defiance of everything expected. A sudden wind rattled the windows. Emily turned sharply. The mirror stood still, but her own reflection looked different. Was she imagining it, or did her reflection smile back with a knowing sadness? She tucked the letter into her coat and stood up. Downstairs, she made her way back to the attic, where all the other letters waited. She now understood. This house wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was heavy with love that never had a place to breathe. She spent the next 2 days reading every letter Peter had written. In them, he poured out stories of music, politics, poetry, everything her grandmother had hidden from the world. Their shared dreams, their plans, their heartbreak. But in the final letter, dated August 5th, 1954, Peter wrote, "I will stop writing now. Not because I've stopped loving you, but because I love you enough to let you go." Emily pressed her hand to her chest. It felt like her heart was breaking for a love that wasn't even her own. As she closed the final letter, she made a decision. This story wouldn't remain hidden. She would write it. She would tell the world who her grandmother really was, who Peter had been, and why it mattered. The past may have been buried, but Emily was going to dig it up and bring it into the light.